So, what's your favorite rocket? Stick around and I'm going to tell you what my favorite rocket is on the next Vintage Retrospekt. How's it going, everybody? This is Chad from Vintage Retrospekt. And today we're going to finally reveal what my favorite rocket is. And that rocket is the Titan II rocket. And the Titan II has so many reasons why I love this rocket. This rocket was responsible for paving the way to the Moon Apollo program. The Titan II and the Titan program began in the early 1960s. So let's begin by talking about the construction of the Titan II rocket. This rocket was constructed with strength in mind and yet efficiency. How do you think they did that? Mostly in its stainless steel design. Other rockets that have actually used this stainless steel design was an Atlas rocket. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Although even present rockets like the Starship is also stainless steel. The Titan II also paved the way to future Titan rockets such as the boosted versions like the Titan III and the Titan IV. Let's now talk about the many spaceflight firsts that this rocket was responsible for. It was the first rocket to provide many human spaceflight testing situations. And like I said before, this rocket helped pave the way and provided the proving grounds for human spaceflight going to the moon. This rocket helped many human spaceflight firsts during the Gemini program. It did the first U.S. spacecraft rendezvous of two Gemini space capsules in orbit. It's also lifted off two spacecraft to test docking in low Earth orbit. It was also the first vehicle to help assist in the first U.S. EVA. Another U.S. first that this rocket did was use a common fuel mixture in both stages. The fuel used in the stages 1 and 2 of this rocket was Aerozine 50 and NTO, or also known as dinitrogen tetroxide. Now I know you're pretty much cringing at the mouth right now because the Russians' R-7 rocket actually was the first to do common fuel mixtures in all their stages. However, I am just going to stick with the US versions. One thing interesting about this rocket is that the airframe of the rocket is actually a precedent to some of our present-day rockets like the Atlas V. And another first for this Titan II, it's the first US rocket to incorporate a twin-nozzle first-stage engine. This engine was called the LR-87 engine, and it had a common turbopump, which was able to send fuel to two different engine nozzles for efficiency, and it was an open gas generator cycle engine, which for short means that there is a little flamethrower in between the two engine nozzles, and it's not a closed loop system like some other engines. Now, one last awesome fact about this rocket was how it solved the Atlas 1.5 or 1.5 stage configuration that the Atlas did have. Now remember that this Atlas rocket was also stainless steel. It was responsible for carrying John Glenn, the first U.S. astronaut to orbit the Earth. This rocket carried a Mercury capsule. Now with that said, this configuration was kind of strange because it had 3 engine nozzles on the bottom of the first stage. Let me explain a little bit more how this was set up. They had a main LR-105 sustainer engine in the middle. This was directly connected to the first stage fuel tank. On both sides of the LR-105 engine was an LR-89 booster engine. Yes, the word booster, but it's liquid fueled. We'll get to that in a little bit here. These two LR-89 side booster engines were not directly connected to the fuel tank structurally, but it was connected to a skirt that wrapped around the main sustainer engine and the two LR-89 engines. This skirt was connected to the bottom of the first stage tank with a decoupling system. As a rocket climbed into the atmosphere, the LR-89 engines were terrible at efficiency. It had lower ISP than the Sustainer engine. However, it had a lot of thrust. So it was able to burst this rocket through the atmosphere, and once that atmosphere got thin enough, the Sustainer engine could then take over. So what they did is the shroud that surrounds all three engines, or if you want to call it a decoupler, it decoupled only the two engines on the side. It was basically an engine decoupler. So both the side booster engines popped off, leaving the LR-105 intact. This shed a significant amount of weight so that the Sustainer engine could get an increased performance, not only in ISP, but regain a little bit of its thrust to weight ratio back. And the Titan II actually solved all these issues by not only using a common fuel mixture, it also solved the staging issue by just having a simplified stage 1 and stage 2. So if you'd like to learn a little bit more about the Titan II rocket, I'm going to cover this rocket in extreme detail in an upcoming episode. So don't forget to like and subscribe so you get that notification when that episode releases. I am your host, Chad, and I will see you out on the launch pad.